Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition, episode number 32 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. Yeah, I know, crazy, Jake, right?
8 months.
We have been just rolling along here. My name is Jim, and joining me, who's just said that 8 months, is my friend, co-host, renowned hitting instructor, former coach, professional evaluator, Jake Epstein. I didn't look at the card again, so I am just on a streak here.
Oh, 32 episodes.
32 episodes. I know. I should have had it down by now. I shouldn't have to even peek at the card.
It's 30 days to create a habit.
That's true. Is it 30 days?
I don't know. I read that somewhere.
I thought it was
a lot
like,
of things.
I thought it was like, I don't know, some however many hours to create a habit and then continue to foster that habit. Yeah. I got a new microphone today, everybody. And Ep is very impressed. Little new microphone, a new earpiece. So we're a real professional operation.
That's right. Well, when you have 3.5 million listeners,
yes,
you got to upgrade. You got to upgrade your system.
Yeah, and even then, sometimes you just kind of go with the flow and shoot the shit, as they say, every week. Hey, by the way, I just want to give a quick plug to Stance Doctor in Clearwater, Florida. The owner, Steve, and Ep and I were talking about this off air. And I want to thank Steve for letting me hit earlier in the week. I got a cut on my hand, Ep. I didn't tell you this off air.
Yes.
And the skin ripped. And I mean, I was following the rule of Ted Williams to hit until your hands bleed, or even then hit when your hands are bleeding. And I did exactly that. But it's a great setup. So anybody in Florida, we do have a lot of listeners in Florida, and anybody listening here in this state, I encourage you to go check out Stance Doctor and talk to Steve. He teaches everything that Ep teaches, and him and I actually talked some hitting, and it seems like he talks about things that we always talk about on this podcast as well. And I was in there at the time when he was doing a camp. And that camp it was about a 4 or 5 person camp, and he was teaching what you teach. So it was pretty great. I suggest that if you want to find good hitting instruction with a great place that I mentioned to Ep2 that has TVs behind every batting cage, and you want to get engulfed in a real baseball facility, then go to Stance Doctor in Clearwater.
Yeah, Steve's awesome. I've known Steve for a really long time now, and he saw instant results after certification, like such great results that he decided to do this more full time and took the plunge. And now he's awesome. He's one of the best out there. So yeah. If you're in the Florida area and you need a place to hit, there's not a better place than seeing Steve Schwartz at the Stance Doctor Academy. Sure.
So again, thank you, Steve, for that. Boy, I'll tell you though, I was there are times where I was hitting well, and there are other times where my timing was off. So, and today we're talking about winter training, our player development volume 5, and we're in the winter, and I was training in the winter. Like I was, still going.
Great segue. This is a fantastic segue. Yeah. So Jim was telling me off air about, his timing difficulties with the machines, and the timing difficulties would have been if, Jim hasn't hit, I'm sure consistently in, a few years. Right. So a year. Okay. My bad. All right. 1 year. So the timing issue is always there, and it's always there with players. And the best way to start with that without facing live pitching is to hit off machines, and not just machines when somebody's putting a ball in it manually. They show you the ball, here you go, and then they feed it in the machine. That is a good way to receive repetitions, and a great way to receive the visual aspect of the pitch coming at you, right? Like the spin, the speed, the break, location, things like that. But if you're trying to work on timing at the same time, you need to have some kind of machine with an auto feeder that gives you time to load and stride. And so I always tell our players, we're membership based at the lab in Texas, right? So I get to see the same players every week, which is so much fun, and to watch them grow. But as we do that, we get new players every week that come in and join, and they're mixed in with players that have been there for a few months. And we always tell them that, it's going to take you 2 weeks of hitting off the machines to figure out the timing. And we spend so much time, I'll stand right behind the player and tell them, okay, get into your back foot, start your stride now. Get into your back. I don't care if you hit it. I don't care. Let's get the timing down. And it's amazing how much better their timing gets after, probably 400 or 500 repetitions off those machines. But they can carry that out to the field, which is, the ultimate benefit is timing. If you have great mechanics and you have terrible timing, then you'll be a coach, right? Like me. So if you have mediocre mechanics, but your timing is, way above average, you can still be successful. And that's really important for some point. Geez, I saw a swing of Roberto Clemente. Did you see that? Somebody posted it. I don't know if it was baseballer or what. It was Roberto Clemente. I don't know, maybe 70 All-Star game, 71. I don't know. So it was an All-Star game. It looked like it was Detroit. He hit a home run into like right center in the upper deck, right? So it was a small double deck park. And if you look at the swing, like, it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It was. His upper body was tilted probably 7 or 8 degrees forward. His back foot was probably 10 to 12 inches off the ground. He was totally on his front foot, like over his front. I shouldn't say on his front foot, over his chest was over his hips. And it was a fastball. It wasn't like it was a breaking ball. And he had some bat drag in there, but his swing plane was like beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what he did, even though he lunged, even though his back elbow wasn't great, his swing plane was great, and he launches this ball 400 and something feet into the opposite field. And it just tells you that if you can be on plane, and you know what that is, more importantly, because there's so many different things about being on plane, but if you can be on plane, if your barrel can be in the zone at the right time for a long period of time, and you can create some speed with your barrel, hey, that's all you need.
Yeah. And that's why guys can hit pitches that they're out in front on. And when analysts always say, well, he kept his hands back and his timing was off, well, he had also had a really good swing plane in that swing.
That's right. Yeah, and his timing was off, but he was still in the zone for a long enough time to be successful. Yeah, absolutely.
I think there was a video a couple of years ago of Anthony Rizzo hitting. He went down to his back left knee, a left-handed batter. He was out in front of the pitch and still hit a home run out of Wrigley. So he was still on play. He was so out in front, but he was still on playing with the pitch, and he hit a home run to deep right.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that, by the way. I don't think. No, but
they can't, and you can't teach that either. You can teach them to, like I like my players to be fooled. We'll do drills where we fool them, and I get them essentially out in front.
Yeah.
Right. But they have to keep their front shoulder down, their hands back, and then they have to fight it off.
Yeah.
Or get a base hit. They're not allowed to swing over it. I watched right before bed last night. Ken Burns' special was on, and I think it was, what year was it? It was like the 20s, right? So it was like the end of Cobb, but it was Ruth. It was really heavy Ruth. But they talked about Ty Cobb and his numbers, and I was astonished at his numbers. Like, this guy, granted, not a model citizen of, happiness, right? Or cohesiveness or love of all people. But he said baseball is my war, and I'm going to win my war. And that's how he played the game. But, he had 4,000, something hits, right? That Ruth or that Rose broke. But he struck out, I don't know, what do you have, 11,000 at bats? I think he struck out 300 and something times.
Yeah.
Come on, people do that in a year and a half.
Well, see, now you got me thinking, because now I'm going to look up Tony. I thought of Tony Gwynn's. I saw this the other day. Something about Tony. I always see. It seems like I see something about Tony Gwynn on either on Facebook or on Twitter every single week. But let me look here. Tony Gwynn strikeouts. I'm gonna Google this here. But there's something very similar to what you were saying there with Ty Cobb and Tony. So in Tony Gwynn, I think we've mentioned this on the show before, but he struck out 434 times in his career in 20 years, an average of 21.7 strikeouts per season. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Amazing. It is amazing. We see 21 strikeouts a night when it comes to with all the games combined. Yeah. Or in one game. Exactly.
One game. Yeah. Both teams combined.
Amazing.
Yeah. And Cobb hit, his average was 366. 366.
I know.
Over, I don't know how many he played, 23 years.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I guess I haven't really. I should read some Ty Cobb books because I've seen the movie, right, that depicts his life, but there has to be some good books out there that I'll find. But yeah, I mean, it was mind blowing. I'm trying to look it up now as we speak. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. This can't be right. 24 years. Okay, so I'm sorry. 680 strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
In 1,300 at bats.
Yeah.
I don't know what that percentage is.
Still pretty good.
Small.
Yeah, very small.
Yeah.
Tony Gwynn, another three. You talk about 366, and Gwynn's average that year, he hit 394, almost hit 400. The 400 mark will never be eclipsed again, obviously. And we talked about with Pete Rose, his hitting mark. His hits will not be eclipsed by anybody, maybe not ever again. I mean, you have to be, it's like 300 wins mark. You have to be really young and have to play a very, very long time into your 40s.
Stay healthy. That's right.
Stay healthy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're ever going to see a guy hit 370 in a season ever again. I don't see it. Maybe that's more doable.
I mean, we may be in COVID for the next 10 to 12 years.
Right.
So if we continue to have 60-game seasons, it could possibly happen.
Yeah.
So no, I agree. I don't know if, in 162 games, somebody's going to hit, 350 again.
So your betting average is 10 to 12 years of COVID.
10 to 12. I'm giving it a solid decade.
Okay. Solid decade until we finally get over it, and then a new pandemic hits. And then...
No, as soon as we get over it, an asteroid will plummet into the Earth.
Right. One almost actually hit Earth before Election Day.
Really?
Yeah. I was reading that. I kind of just wish it did.
No, we would have wanted it, 6 months before to not have to deal with all the ads, right?
All right. Well, good stuff. By the way, did we miss anything last week on the Pete Rose episode? We always do, but we got good reception from our listening audience. Did we miss anything last week? I think and somebody actually asked us a question, a listener that we'll get to at the end of the episode and connected back to last week's episode about talking about Pete Rose. And I invite everybody to listen to that and follow along with the analysis on the Epstein hitting Facebook page. But did we miss anything from last week? We covered everything with Pete, didn't we?
We did, yeah. I'm trying to think of any other story or fact or where I can add to it. But no, I think we covered most anything. I remember having I have a signed picture I think I told you about last week when I was, I don't know how old I was.
Yeah, it's right behind you.
Maybe like 8, something like that. And then shortly after that, he came to Denver for like an autograph signing when I was a kid. And he gave me a bat, like one of his bats inside it. So my recollection of Pete Rose isn't of the picture because I don't really remember that. But I remember going into that Chevrolet dealership in Colorado and having a bat signed. Like, I'll never forget that. Like, how cool is this? You go into a car dealership and there's people like signing autographs and stuff. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Not everybody has great experiences at car dealerships.
No, not at all.
In fact, I don't know anybody who has good experiences at car dealerships. Quite frankly.
The car dealers do.
They do, yeah. All right, so let's get into today's episode, number 32, Winter Training. It's part of our Player Development Volume 5, and we're talking about winter training today. And I think we should start off with asking the first question. At this point, recording this late November, the episode's coming out on November 30th on Monday, obviously. And be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast, by the way. New episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. And check out our YouTube page, the Epstein hitting. The Lab Epstein hitting Facebook page. Yeah, I'm getting it all confused, all jumbled up and confused. And also email us too, jimbopodcast21gmail.com with your questions, concerns, topic ideas. Tell us how bad we stink, how great we are. We invite all criticism. But let's, at this point, because we're into winter training, and it's a little bit different this year because of COVID and whatever. And a lot of players across the country didn't have a full season in the summer, in the spring, whatever. But kind of putting that aside, where should you be at this point in late November in your winter training on the offensive side?
It depends who you are. If you're a 12-year-old kid in South Texas,
Mm-hmm.
then you just finished fall ball maybe a
Yeah.
week ago. They've been playing the whole time. So if you're a cold weather climate player, maybe you're getting ready for basketball,
Yeah.
right? You're finishing football. So you shouldn't be anywhere baseball wise. You should be creating your plan. I think that's why the timing of this episode is so great. It's what do I need to do to get better
Yeah.
as a hitter? There's other things, maybe, I need to get bigger. I need to get stronger. Maybe I need to change my diet. Maybe, there's things of that nature too. But on a hitting standpoint, the month of, December
Mm-hmm.
and January really are for swing changes. If you have to make a stride change, if you have to make a hand path change, if you have to make a lower body change, now is the time to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
the only way to make changes last, I shouldn't say that, you can make changes last, but the only way to make changes quickly, and by quickly I mean within a few months, rather than changes take years, right? So if you can get it done in a month or two, the only way to do that is through proper repetition and limiting the amount of times you take your old move. So for instance, if you're working on a bat drag, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have bat drag, and you go and you log into the Epstein Online Academy, right? You're one of my guys, and you're like, okay, I got to do 40 bottom hand drills. I got to do 40 top hand drills. I got to do some no legs drills. Ep wants me to do, a contact drill. And I do that, and I take 100 quality swings where I'm performing my moves correctly without having bat drag. And then the next day, I'd say, Dad, can you go throw me some batting practice? And then I take 100 swings live with my old swing.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden I know both swings and I'm not making any progress. So
Sure.
the key to change is limiting or removing the old swing. And if you can do that for 30 days, if you can do that for 60 days, oh, you're well on your way to change. But if you know how to do both, like I can do my drill swings off a tee or in controlled batting practice, but I'm still taking my other swing, now all of a sudden you're conscious competent. And that doesn't show up in stressful environments. All of a sudden, we're in a game, we're trying to make a team. Maybe there's a spring tryout for a team, the high school team. We're trying to, make that team in February or March. And now I'm like, oh, I have to think about my elbow. I got to think about it. Doesn't work in stressful environments. So you have to remove the old swing. You have to remove the stress of the old swing and build that foundation, build that house from the ground up, and then slowly start adding stress. And that's where I think the Epstein system is different than most. There's good information everywhere. There really is. Like there's knowledgeable people out there. Everybody uses slow motion.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, everybody picks different things that they want to look at, and I'm probably included in that too, right? Like I posted something of Nelson Cruz the other day, which I'm sure you saw, right? And if you look at that session, that doesn't look like Nelson Cruz, right? You look at Nelson Cruz in a game, and he's hitting jacks.
Yeah.
And he's hitting like a ball down the right field line with his bottom hand, and he's not using any of his body. And that's one of my favorite drills. And that's why I put that in there, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what we do every day. But that's what I chose to post, right? I didn't post him dropping his barrel and hitting a bomb, or dropping his barrel and fouling a ball off. I chose to post that. So people might look at me and be like, oh, maybe that's what he wants.
Right.
But what we're good at is changing players and knowing what a player needs. Now, if I have players, we have, Matt and I work with players down at the lab all the time that maybe 5%, maybe less than that, 3% of the players we teach actually swing down, they actually chop down through the ball. And with those players, Matt and I would never dream of giving them that Nelson Cruz drill, right? Or the high T drill where he's trying to stay on top.
Yeah.
We're trying to get that kid to sit back and swing up. So every player has to be taught something different. And that's why you have to find a quality person. If you're making a swing change, you have to have the right person telling you which swing change to make. You can't just be like, oh, my coach said to do this. Well, your coach has maybe 15 other players on the team, and he may have just spitballed that, hey, you got to, swing up more, swing down more, go to the other way more. But you have to have the proper plan to execute that. And that's why, we take pride in, look, this is what you need, player A, and this is what you need, player B, and then here's the plan to accomplish that.
Yeah. And for players out there, I think one of the most important keys is actually being able to figure out what you need to work on, and then going to build, as you mentioned, build that foundation. And it's a two-way street as well with their coaches. Now, how do players and coaches do it easily, fairly easily? I mean, you do it fairly easily. You've been doing this for so long. But how do players go about looking at their mistakes, looking at what they want to improve on or build a foundation on, and go about that training and try to build that foundation?
By themselves? Yeah, we try to, every player I come in contact with, I tell them how to make changes. If you're doing this and the ball is doing this, this is what you're doing and this is what you need to change. So hopefully they're around somebody that knows how to do that. Yeah. It's very difficult. Self-assessment, very difficult. In fact, I had a conversation, somewhat on and off topic, but yesterday I got to fish. Caught myself 3 beautiful brown trout yesterday up in Deckers. I just want to throw that out there because I don't always catch fish. A lot of times I just go freeze my butt off in the river. And yesterday I caught fish. So I went up with one of my buddies, and his son is a high school freshman who I've worked with before. And he's like, yeah, I was throwing to him the other day just in the driveway with some tennis balls, and he was kind of flustered. And he stepped out and he's like, hold on, Dad, I need to really get my knob out in front more because I'm flipping over stuff.
Yeah.
And then the next 4 pitches, boom, he hit him. And his dad was like, I was so impressed. He's like, because I don't know I didn't play baseball. He's like, I had no idea what he was doing, but he was able to kind of be self-aware of what the problem was. And he fixed it in 2 swings. And I told him, I said, that is so difficult for players to do and so difficult for coaches to teach players to do that's pretty cool. Hopefully the kid stays out of jail. Like that's the next step is, he can assess his swing. Now you got to, make sure you're eligible. No, I'm just kidding. If you're listening,
Danny Almonte type deal. Yeah. All right. Well, very good. So again, and video is it's so accessible nowadays that it's easy for players and players seemingly love to put their swings on social media anyway, or they have a tendency to. So it's very easy to know what you need to work on and point it out. And it actually becomes, I think, a little bit easier for instructors. No?
I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. If they take video and they look at video, and that's why I always give, every lesson, if I'm doing an individual lesson, I always send players home with a video of what we worked on and what their feels were. And I'll ask them what their words were. What did you feel? Like, what were you thinking about? And then we document that. And then at the lab, we have a lot more players, but we do that at least once a month where I give everybody, videos of what they're thinking and what they're training so that they know and they look at those and they're like, okay, now if I can, have mom and dad video during a game.
Sure.
Or a buddy. I mean, phones are everywhere, unfortunately, but phones are, hey, Johnny, can you video my round of BP at high school practice today?
Yeah.
And then they go home and look at it. And then I get a lot of those, people send them in. Hey, here's coach, here's what I have going on. This is my latest swing. And I'll be like, okay, you're in a good spot, but let's work on this more. So yeah, I mean, the phone has obviously changed our world for the better, right? And maybe for the worse in some instances, like my children, but but no, I mean the phone makes that part of it, your swing and video and teaching it just so much easier.
So there are some I say this a lot where I kind of miss the good old days. I say that a lot, where technology wasn't as advanced and things were seemingly a little bit more simple, wrapped in some more complicated issues, if you will. But there are times where I do wish I played in this era, if you will, era, quote unquote, where it was so easy to, again, phone, take video, send it, and get immediate feedback rather than having to go to a computer or try to, whatever, send a video via email. That takes a day because you have to figure all this crap out. And now you just do it with the phone. It's very easy.
Yeah. Or you don't even have access to video.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's just, Has it made better players? Has it created more baseball players that are having better success? Is it growing the game?
Yeah.
Or is it just fluff?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are baseball players, I mean, this is the great debate. Are baseball players just born? I don't know.
Maybe we can debate that for an episode on
absolutely. The podcast. Yeah. I mean, I know my job is to maximize the play. That's what I always tell my player. Maximize your potential. If your potential is, if your DNA says high school baseball, I want you to make your high school baseball team. If your DNA says Division I want to make sure you play at least Division I.
Mm-hmm.
But what we never want to do is, have kids that look back and say, geez, what if?
Right.
What if I had a conversation with my dad a couple weeks ago, and who's doing better, by the way. He rode his horse yesterday. So he's definitely on the
great
map.
news.
He's doing great. So, but we had the conversation. He said, because he always would make the joke about me that I had my mom's genes, right? If I had his genes, I'd be a big leaguer. And he's right, because my dad's athletic genes he could have done anything, right? I mean, he couldn't see, but he played football. He was an All-American baseball player, like whatever.
Yeah.
But he said, I'm really proud of you because you didn't have that special athleticism that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
You had other attributes, like you were a clutch player and you worked harder than anybody else on this and that. And that's what it is. Like if you looked at me and my athleticism and speed and agility and they put me through those showcases, like I could throw really hard and I could hit pretty good when I was in high school. I wasn't a great hitter by any stretch. There's no way I would have played Division I baseball. I was just kind of a clutch performer. Like the coaches came out to watch me play and I'd hit a double or two and I caught well. And if I didn't, I never would have played baseball in college. So you have to make the most of your opportunities. So, I've always had that mindset is I just want to get the best out of you.
Yeah.
And let's see where that takes us so that you have no regrets when you look back and say, geez, what if I would have done this when I was, 12 years old? If I would have made this swing change, geez, I bet I could have been a pretty good baseball player.
Yeah. The regret in life is the worst.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, you worked hard as a player. You work hard now as a instructor and coach and professional evaluator, and you're working hard over the holidays. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a pretty fun college, and high school players are invited to attend this camp as well. It's December 27th through the 30th at the lab in College Station. We're only taking 10 baseball players and 10 softball players. I have 1 or 2 players from Alaska coming down.
Very good.
Again, there's a player from Washington State coming in. We'll obviously have some local players as well. Kid from Oklahoma State, baseball player. So, last year we had a bunch of Ivy League guys. Their season's, kind of up in the air. I'm not sure if they'll be able to make it out. Another player from Florida is going to come out. So it's a really fun event where, I get to spend time with players that, some of them I've known for a while and now they're in college and some of them are new. But it's a blast. I mean, we'll spend at least 4 hours a day together. Yeah. Going through all the stuff. We have the new virtual reality softball now. We got that update a couple weeks ago. It's amazing. I got to hit off of a rise ball the other day.
And how'd you do?
And I didn't swing. I just sat there and looked. And then I cried when I took the headset off. I said, there's no way anyone can do that. So I'll have to prepare myself virtually for that. So yeah, we do everything. We'll do VR. I mean, you can't swing for 4 hours, right? But we'll work on breaking pitches, fastballs, rise balls. We'll do teaching, make sure our swing planes are locked in. We'll do some, kinetic sequencing movements and making sure we're maximizing our ground force. So it's a good way to get players, make sure their mechanics are locked in. But more importantly, we want them to see velocity, speed, and spin so that they're ready to go back and crack the starting lineup when they get back to college.
Very good. So for more information, log on to EpsteinHitting.com and sign up for that camp today. Spots are limited. EpsteinHitting.com. And of course,
and the Lab BCS.
Oh, I'm really off today.
No, I'm just very confusing.
No. I get it every week. I don't know what's going on. I got the email address wrong. This morning I went to log into the email address, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com, and I was typing it in on Google. I put jimbopodcast@gmail.com, And I tried the password a million times, and I'm like, motherfucker, I can't get... And then I realized, I said, oh, wait a second. It's 21. Simple change. It's like we're talking about mechanical changes. Sometimes it's just a simple mechanical change.
Yeah, sometimes the problem, I mean, you're a clean liver, so the problem is you told me you had some cupcakes at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I think that kind of wigged you out a little bit. You got like a little sugar brain going on.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah. So I get all the websites wrong. And one more time, thelabbcs.com. Damn it. And then Epstein Online Hitting Academy for annotations and whatnot.
Yes. We keep it simple here.
Yeah. You keep it simple. I've made it very complicated in today's episode. Episode number 32, winter training. What common swing changes do you see? Broad question. I know it changes with different age and whatnot, but what kind of swing changes do you often see that players need to make during the winter time where things just kind of break down and fall off from fall ball and summer and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, a lot of times they reassess their swing. I'm taking, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but I remember seeing something, Matt Carpenter. So Matt Carpenter has been a big, he made a swing change a couple of years ago and tried to really lift everything and had some great years doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Or I don't know how many great years, but and then he started to get exposed, right? And he had some pretty bad seasons.
Yes.
And so if we look back at, 2020, he didn't hit well, but he hit, dating back to 2013, he hit 313, and then he hit the 270s for 3 years. And even when he was hitting 270, he still hit 28 home runs, 21 home runs. So then all of a sudden he hit 36 home runs. Yeah. Which is, obviously, 12 or 13 more. And then all of a sudden he started hitting 226 and then 186. So he's like, okay, I got to get back to kind of where I was, right? I got to flatten off a little bit. So he made a complete swing change. He was a guy that I'm trying to get my barrel underneath and lift everything to now I'm trying to stay on top and hit low line drives over the shortstop's head, right? So that's a very different, and he's going through that swing change. Actually, he struggled with that. That's not an easy swing change to make, especially on your own when you're that age. So usually it's swing plane, it's swing plane oriented. It might be, again, at the higher levels, it might be, I was really getting exposed on this pitch, right? Like the pitch in destroyed me this year, or the pitch away destroyed me. Okay, I got to figure out how to hit that pitch. I want to see more of those pitches on the outer half. Looking at younger players, it's going to be, okay, I have a barrel drop. So I got to figure out how to, like that Nelson Cruz video when he's hitting that high tee and he's trying to keep it under the top of the net. Like that was awesome. Yeah. Okay. But it's like those usually young players that dump the barrel have bat drag. We work a lot of high tee drills and we'll work on keeping the back, the back armpit or the back arm in position longer. Yeah. So those are going to be, usually your amateur players, it's going to be that. Maybe, a player drifts. We've noticed that this player drifts a little bit, and after heel plant, their front hip slides forward 2 or 3 inches before it rotates, and that's not like an adjustment. That's just what they normally do. Maybe we just give that player some exercises to stride and get that left hip to go back or that front hip to go back, or we'll isolate that move. That's very, very common. Sometimes it's a stride thing. We have players that step out a lot. Okay, that's really common. So, okay, we don't have to worry about mechanics. So I had a player a couple years ago, 2 years ago, that was going to quit. He was at the time probably 12 years old, 12 to 13 years old. He was getting ready for high school. I don't know if he got a hit all summer. He maybe got one hit. And this is when I was actually coaching at Mizzou. And, so I talked to, it was through a friend. I talked to a dad, and I think the kid was probably 11 or 12. He was younger, right? And he sent me some video. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, well, when I get back in town, let's attack this. Yeah. So that was spring of 19. So we're looking at the fall of 19 now. And what I did was he used to step and swing at the same time. Like every time he picked up his foot, he would swing. And he went to a local instructor facility here that teaches really get that barrel down right early, get on plane early, tip the barrel. That was kind of their thing. So I had to deal with that, and then I had to deal with this. It just wasn't an athletic move, right? It was just he would step out and to the left. So I opened him up like Jose Batista. Was that his name back in the day? Jose Batista. So my dad used to say he looked like he was taking tickets, right? He was
Are you talking about the Orioles? Are you talking about Melvin? No, not Melvin Mora. Orioles guy.
Yeah. And
where his chest faced the pitcher.
Yes, that guy. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to look him up. You keep going. I'm going to look him up.
Yeah.
Because now I'm curious.
So I had this player step in there, and I'm like, every time he steps out to the left. So what does everyone do? Close your stance, right? So I'm like, okay, we're going to open your stance so much that you can't hit from that position, and you have to step and start so early and step so far in that there's no way to step out. So I had his feet set up. I actually had the stance doctor unit where his front foot was on the outside of it, and he had to step back in on an angle. And all we did was that. I threw the ball on the outside part of the plate and high, and I told him he wasn't allowed to foul it off or drop his barrel. He just had to hit a low line drive to right. He had to take his left foot, and because his left foot had to move so much that he had to start early. Right. He had to get his load going early. He had to get his stride going early. Anyway, totally changed his life. Went out the next year, hit, I think, 5th for his team. Now he's playing in high school. He made the high school team. He was a guy that he was going to quit. So we took the winner and changed a bad muscle memory habit. He stepped in the bucket. His timing, his stride and his swing, where his front shoulder was too quick. And we changed all of that in about 2 months. Now he's still working on it. But his stance isn't as open. We slowly made it a little bit more normal, but we had to change that move. So that's a really common, changing the stride, changing the load, getting the hips not to slide, and then, maybe a wrist roll issue, somebody that rolls over once in a while or dumps their barrel. We attack that. So we try to attack, what is your one thing? Let's assess your last season. What was the one thing that gave you struggles? And let's make sure that doesn't happen next year.
Yeah. Tony Bautista was the name of the Oriole who had that wide open stance. And as the story goes, I heard that story once about him. Things were going so bad for him that he just said, you know what? The hell with it. I'm just going to open up completely and try to hit like that. And it worked, and it stuck for him. Sometimes
it did.
It's just... You
need another
something.
feel. Yeah. And it's Mike Bordick. I don't know. I was an A's fan growing up. Mike Bordick did the same thing. Like I need a change of feel. And what that
you throw caution at the wind almost.
Yeah.
That's what it becomes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you take out expectations, right? Yeah. I'm going to try this. But really what it makes you do when you get to the bottom of it is you have to get going early and you have to control that move.
Yeah.
And that is something we spend so much time on at the lab, or even my lessons here in Denver when I come back. It's just overlooked. Players can't do that. In fact, I posted something on the Epstein hitting Twitter page of Luke Mann, who was one of my favorite guys at Mizzou. He was a freshman when I was there. And a really, really talented kid. He could pitch. He plays third, and he's just going to get bigger and bigger. But he was the one we talked about, a player at Mizzou where we were talking about spin, and 2 guys hit the ball the same exact distance, but one kid hit the ball 10 miles an hour harder because he had so much side spin. So Luke's a guy that is able to create unbelievable backspin because of how he controls. He's got a really good top hand. But his stride was so much better than I remembered. I haven't seen him in a year and a half. And I watched that stride. Somebody posted, I think it was Collegiate Baseball or something, posted, or D1 Baseball, posted him hitting a home run in the fall game that they were there watching. And his stride was so smooth and slow and rhythmic. I'm like, man, you add that kind of movement to what kind of hands and mechanics this guy has, it's going to be great. So telling you have to put in time with that. And that's why players will go, minor leaguers or big leaguers will go play winter ball because they want to work out timing more than anything else. It may not be a mechanical issue, but they need to see more pitches. They want to work on a different stride or a different stance. Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of repercussions if they go. They're not going to lose a contract if they go down there and struggle. So it's a good way to get at bats, and it's a good way to, feel out a new rhythm and maybe a new stride.
Yeah. I think all coaches should listen to the next question and your answer as to what I'm going to ask you here, because this is very important. How do coaches balance what they're trying to do with their players while working on that one specific thing that you mentioned earlier that gave that player the most trouble from the year before?
You just have to stick to the plan, right? You can't get overzealous. And what happens is players, you start working with, a player working on their bat dragging. You're like, wow, that was great. Mm-hmm. You get super excited, and then you're like, okay, let's work on something else.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start working on something else, and then all of a sudden here comes that bat drag again. A week later, here it starts creeping in again. So you have to stick to the process, stick to your goals of what you want that player to accomplish, and make sure that you stay in your lane. Right. You gotta make sure that you don't, see things that aren't there. Like, okay, let's see if we can get more power now. And then as soon as you start doing that, all of a sudden here comes those swing point issues, and it doesn't work. Like, you want to get more power, go do some deadlifts, go do some squats, go do some cleans.
Yeah, do some compound body movements, right?
Yeah, like go do that. We'll focus on this elbow. Like, we're not going to get 5 miles an hour of extra bat speed by you increasing your torque or, increasing your stride. It's just not. I wish it was there, but it's not there.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned bat speed. What if, how do you improve on that? What if that is the one thing, or the bat quickness? What if that is the one thing, or the torque, that they need to improve on, and it's the biggest mechanical flaw? How do you go about helping that player develop more bat speed, which oftentimes it's kind of like, in a way, like arm speed, that, you can only, again, you mentioned DNA earlier, your DNA only kind of dictates what kind of bat speed or arm speed you may have.
Yeah, it is amazing. I was doing some international work the other day, and there was a kid hitting me. He was 15 something, right? And it was like, I looked at it in slow motion, and I was like, wow, these are really good moves. And he's 150 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, the whip, he's setting up so much lag and then whip, and he doesn't roll over when he releases his whip. Like, that's a pretty special move. But again, it's in slow motion. I don't know what it looks like. So then there's another view where I can see him hitting the ball on a field, and I'm like, 150 pounds. He's hitting balls it was a pro ballpark, right? And I don't know where it was. Somewhere it was in the Dominican or Venezuela. It was probably the Dominican. It was a pretty nice stadium.
One of the pro academies, right?
Yeah. No, this was like one of their stadiums.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Not affiliated with an organization yet. This was like a showcase there or something.
Okay.
At the, where they play winter ball games.
Sure.
And this kid's hitting balls like off the warning track at 150 pounds in BP. He's hitting balls 370 feet. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like that. Are those balls juiced? What is, I'm assuming it's probably not a big league ball they're hitting over there all the time. So
right.
There are some, like, there's a kid that's born with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, whatever he does, he's got lightning in his hands. And when people say, boy, his hands are so good, people say that, like, why does the ball jump off that guy's hands? Well, it usually is that last lever. So if we're trying to build or increase bat speed, there's a couple things that we do to see if it's maximized. One, do we have a weight shift? Are we creating enough ground force and energy from the beginning of our swing? Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Number two, are we creating separation? Is our front shoulder down when our hips start to open? Okay, great. Number three, is our contact point in the right spot? Are we hitting the ball with our front toes? And number four, are we releasing the barrel at the right time when we're making contact? So that's where we can try to choke out a little bit more bat speed. And meaning if their mechanics are pretty good, and we're trying to increase bat speed, that's where we'll look to see if there's any room there. There may or may not be. We do some upper body isolation drills, get them to use their hands more. Then we make sure, the checkpoints, the front shoulders down, they have a stride. Okay. Usually if I can increase someone's bat speed, usually the first day, right? Like 3 to 4 miles an hour on blast. Yeah. That's just with a proper stride and a proper contact point. So when people say, oh, I increased your bat speed, like, it's not that difficult to increase bat speed of a player that has bad mechanics or a bad contact point.
Sure.
That's not what it is. Then we have to build in consistency. So once we reach that max, and most, like, our players at the lab now that we've had for a couple months, they've reached their max for the most part, especially the older players, right? That learn a little bit easier. So now it's all about getting bigger and stronger. Right? It's about creating explosiveness with our body. Now, can you do that with a 10-year-old? No. Okay.
I can do some push-ups.
they can absolutely do some push-ups and they can do some med ball work. But we're not getting crazy with it, where the older kids, all of a sudden you'll see those big gains with puberty. So we did max week. Was that 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago at the lab, we did max week where we charted everybody's stats. And it was funny because I take everyone's picture when they walk in the lab when they're members, the first day. And it was like the junior high, the 7th, 8th graders. It was like they had the biggest gains of anyone because it was like testosterone kicked in, right? Yeah. Between 7th grade and 8th grade. I'm like, you don't even look like the same kid in this picture. We got to retake your picture. So yes, size and strength create the most gains, when it comes. And sometimes you have to tell players, hey man, stay the course, know your role. You're 100 pounds. Let's get your swing plane. Boom. We're hitting line drives in the gaps left and right. You can control the barrel. And all of a sudden, when you grow 3 inches and you put on 20 or 30 pounds in a year, all of a sudden those balls go out of the park. But we can't force that right now. It's not a smart thing. So sometimes that's hard for young kids because you have 8th graders that are 165 pounds. And then in the same group, we have 8th graders that are 105 pounds. And they're just, one's a man and one's not yet. And it's hard for them sometimes. That's rough.
Let's discuss the mental side. Kevin Wilson, who is a hitting consultant, and you've said this before many times on the show, but Kevin Wilson has said this too, that hitting is a conversation, especially on the mental side. I don't know. I don't know how it can be physically, but on the mental side, it's a conversation. How do you go about in the winter training on the mental side of things with kids of all different ages and guys who are young adults, high school and college players?
It depends what part of the mental side we're talking about, because there are 2 sides. One is creating a plan, sticking to a plan, anticipation, doing your research on what that pitcher has. So there's not a lot of that going on typically because we're not in season. The other is about relaxation, right? And being confident in what we do and not having negative, focusing on the negative, but focusing on the good swings that we're taking. I think there's exercises for that. I want to put players in an environment where they are going to fail in the winter. And I'm going to stress them out, but I'm not going to do that if we're making a swing change. Because that's the last thing you want to do. You want to put on padded gloves and warm, cozy music and put the fireplace on when you're working on mechanical changes, right? We're making it easy. It's nice. It's, hey, you're doing great, this and that. Then once those are changed, it's like you turn on the AC/DC, you crank up the hack attack to throw a 80-mile-an-hour cutter, right? And you're like, battle for your life. It's the bottom of the 9th, runner on second base. You got to find a way to scratch him across the plate. Oh, yeah. There's 2 out. I don't care what you do. You can't make the last, and then you put that kind of pressure on them. So that's the kind of mental stuff I like to do with players once their mechanics are good. And if they fail, it's like, hey, we failed in this controlled, like, hey, nobody cares. There's no fans here. There's no stats here. Are you still alive? Oh my gosh. Right. Oh, you struck out right there. It's okay. And the more they get used to that, hey, it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. When they go in their first at bat of a game and they fail, runner on second base, 2 outs, and they don't bring them in, they don't care. Yeah. It's like, I got 2 or 3 more at bats to get this done. So that's, kind of a fun, competitive environment that we will create, to stress players out so that when they're, between the white lines, they don't stress themselves out, because that really is the ultimate killer is, the player that can't handle that. They can perform in practice and they can't perform in games. And it's sad to see sometimes when you work with players and you're like, gosh, there's nothing that would stop you from being great on the field, but you get stressed out, right? You get tense and you have to do this. And what happens when you get tense? Your timing gets bad. Yeah. Your timing gets early, right? You try to do too much. So if you can put them in those environments and practice in those environments, it's a really good situation to help players succeed in games. So it's really it's not a one size fits all with everything. Like with everything else, it's no one size fits all on the mental side. There's no real template to kind of build off of. You have to just know the player. You have to know the player, because some players want more information, and sometimes you can give them more information, or sometimes you can't. And sometimes players, I'm thinking of Luke Mann. Actually, we were talking about Luke, and he's a guy that wanted minimal information. He was like, what, yep, I don't need to know his splits. Like, what are his pitches? How hard does he throw? What are his sets? Does he throw more fastballs than break balls? Okay, thanks. And then I had Pete Zimmerman, he's a monster. He's in the Astros organization now. But, Pete wanted to know the spin rates and the release point and how much break every pitch had. That helped him prepare.
Sure.
Like, he was overly prepared all the time. He would hit between at bats. Like, whatever he needed to do, like he would go take swings in the locker room, where it was warm or wherever it was. Like so you have to understand that with those players, you can't give the player that doesn't want information. You don't want to give them anything that might cloud their judgment. So you got to know them. Absolutely.
Yeah. Before we get to the listener question here, did I miss anything on our, Winter Trading, our Player Development Systems Volume 5, episode number 32 of the lab?
The only thing you missed was www.thelabbcs.com.
Yeah. And Jimbo Podcast 21 at gmail.com.
Yes. Yeah. No, if you want to have a good winter training program, come see us.
Yes.
We'll put you on one. Yeah. We'll get you ready. No, I don't think so. I think we covered everything. And I do think, being in shape, in the winter, if you putting on weight is a good thing, right? Eat a lot, work out a lot, get a little bigger and stronger, show your coach that you're getting better. You're not just taking swings. You're trying to be a better person, a better athlete. I'm stronger. I'm faster, whatever it is. You show up that next spring and you look like a different player. Holy cow. Those coaches, especially you're getting ready for high school or you're already in high school, those coaches are like, okay, I got a guy here that he's into it. Like, this guy's going to be one of my players for the next 4 years at the varsity level. I'm excited about that versus a kid that comes back looking exactly the same.
Sure. Well, good stuff this week. Let's get to our listener question. And this comes to us from Bill via jimbopodcast21 at gmail.com. He says, Jim and Jake, I listened in on the last podcast on Pete Rose. Interesting that his torque angle was only 21 degrees. Today, hitters like Betts, Acuna, and Baez are almost twice that. As for the cause of Rose's low torque angle, the listener's question was spot on. Rose really didn't counter-rotate, no down and in movement of the front shoulder due to the way he held his hands and bat in his stance in pre-stride movements. Thus, he lost bat speed. Seems like he tried to make up for it with linear back-to-front movement. Would I be correct in saying that? And he also went on to say, one more paragraph here. Also, interesting segment on scouting. Thank you very much. I know. Made me think of the movie Trouble with the Curve, starring Clint Eastwood, which was about the conflict between a scout's intuition and analytics. Jake was on to something. MLB should sponsor leagues. They could hire reputable high school coaches to coach them under the supervision of pro scouts. Travel ball has become a pay-for-play racket in many cases. I agree with that. Big time. A glorified version of town recreation ball in too many cases. And that comes to us from Bill via jimbopodcast21 at gmail.com. But let's circle back to his first paragraph here. I'll read the last line. Seems like he tried to make up for it with linear back-to-front movement. Is he correct in saying that?
I don't think he made it. He had a big move, but so did Betts. Has a huge move too, back-to-front movement that blocks it. But Betts gets his body into a position that, Rose couldn't. Yeah. Like, Rose wasn't half the athlete that probably Mookie Betts is. Mookie Betts can probably stand under the hoop. I don't know how tall he is, 5'10", 5'11", and dunk a basketball. Yeah. Right. I guarantee you Rose isn't that. He throws the ball, but Rose couldn't throw the ball. Rose couldn't run like that, So we're talking about different athletes. Did Rose make the most of what he had? Not all big leaguers have that much torque either. Like, he's spot on. Betts has a ton. I don't know if Acuna has a ton. I'll have to look back at that. He doesn't have a big front shoulder down and in move, Acuna, but Donaldson has a ton. Who else did he mention in there? He was right with one other player. Baez has a ton. Yeah, absolutely. So but if you look at like Carlos Correa, who hits a lot of home runs, doesn't have much torque. I mean, he probably is in that mid-20s kind of range. So, yes, if we're looking at Rose and we're saying if you increase your torque, you'll increase your bat speed, definitely. I think if you take him from 20 degrees of torque to 30 degrees of torque, he's probably going to pick up 1 to 2 miles an hour at bat speed, right? Yeah. And maybe those balls that hit the warning track go out of the park more. And you have to also understand he played in a different era. Like Riverfront was big at that time. Stadiums were big. They weren't 365 or 360 to the gaps. They were 375 or 390 in the gaps. Mm-hmm. And I remember my dad telling me, I think it was the year he hit 30 home runs. He's like, oh no, the year he hit 25, the World Series year, 72. He said, Jake, I must have hit 15 balls that got caught up against the right center field fence in Oakland. And it was 385, I think he said, and now it's 362.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a different game. So maybe if Rose all of a sudden, balls that he just misses, they still go out of the park, right? Like maybe he turns himself into a different hitter. Like we never know. The game is so different. Now it's, hey, let's hit the ball as far as we can. Could he have done that? And would he have changed his body posture and his front shoulder to do that? I don't know. Yeah. But what we do know is he got a lot of hits. He was quote unquote a singles hitter, right? Mm-hmm. He was trying to see the ball longer. He probably didn't jump fastballs early in the count to pull home runs, right? Like that wasn't his mindset. So maybe his front shoulder being up allowed him to see the ball better, or not down and in as much. Maybe that limited move helped him be more consistent. Nobody knows. But Bill is absolutely right that if one of the reasons he didn't have as much bat speed was because he didn't get his body in the right position to create as much bat speed. Does that mean that he can't have a role on a major league team? No, because if you can hit, right? And he was a guy that found barrels and got on base. So there's going to be a role for you. Now, if somebody would have taken Rose and said, hey, I need you to do this, that, and the other, maybe he wouldn't have been Pete Rose too.
Right.
Never know.
Yeah. Well, good stuff this week, Bill. Thank you for the question. And if anybody does have questions, concerns, comments, topic ideas, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Next week, we're circling back again, volume number 6, and we will be discussing a hitter's movement, understanding a hitter's movement, how a hitter can understand their own movements so then they can make in the on-deck circle, make those, or in-game, make those adjustments they need to, that you teach, by the way, and you've been teaching for years, to understand their swing and be able to sort of eradicate what may be going on in that game. If they're 0 for 2, they can make that quick change on the fly.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have Mr. Miyagi as a guest speaker to teach us how to control our body movements and anticipate threats coming at us.
Yes. Yeah, I've already been in touch with Mr. Miyagi.
Okay, good.
Yes. So we'll be talking about that next week. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next week. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Take care.